the Observer's Calendar for April 2025 on episode 477 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. So we've had a pretty good cloudy spell, Shane. Don't know if you've had the chance to go out and look up, but it really hasn't been very good at all.
No, it hasn't. I haven't taken a telescope out. I've just done a little bit of naked eye in the backyard, watching Jupiter and Mars progress through the sky when there's been a few openings in the clouds. But yeah, really not too much.
Yeah, I think there was like a couple nights, like you said, but they weren't observing nights. Maybe one of them could have been. I feel like that was almost a couple weeks ago now, anywhere more than a week ago. So yeah,
Well, and it's been kind of odd. Like, we have clear days and then cloudy nights, and it just seems like a new trend. It used to be the other way around. You sort of get some afternoon cloud and then clearing at night, and we're just not getting that clearing.
yeah, past week not very good, but hopefully as we get into the warmer weather, not that our weather kind of warmed up a little and then it cooled back down. We haven't been above zero much the past week, and I think later on in this week it is supposed to warm up. So
hmm
hopefully once that plays out, we'll be into some different weather systems.
Yeah, yeah, I sure hope so. Really starting to get that itch to do some observing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's been a bad rut. And then I think the last time we had any kind of decently clear skies was during full moon. So I did put
hmm
a star in our observing for this month of April. So maybe we can go and take a look at that star.
Well, let's hope.
All right. So April 1st, we have the crescent moon pairing with the Pleiades. It's pretty close in. Nice binocular view. That I put a little finder chart in our notes here, and we have a little, I don't know what you call it, like a greeny blue circle, and that's 5 degrees. And so you can see the moon and the Pleiades are well within that 5 degree circle of a pretty average binocular field of view.
Yeah, always a pretty pairing when you have the Pleiades with the moon or any of the planets. It's really nice to look at, especially through binoculars. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a crescent moon too, like 4 days before its first quarter. So,
Hmm.
that I think that's going to be quite a pretty sight there.
Yeah, great photo opportunity.
I think so, and should be able to see it. I think with the eye, you should be able to see both the star cluster and the moon together on April 1st.
Hmm. Well, hopefully we have clear skies.
And that's no fooling, eh?
hmm Well, I'm trusting you on that one.
So also, as we're in that first week of April, you can try spotting the brightest star in our nighttime sky, Sirius, before sunset, making
Hmm.
it the second brightest star in the daytime sky. I suppose at negative 1.4 magnitude, Sirius is visible before sunset this week. So, bit of a tough one. You'd kind of have to look and get a pretty good fix on your landscape for where it is on some night or nights before, and then give it a shot. Probably with binoculars and such would do well to try to ferret it out from the bright daytime sky or sunset sky before the sun goes below the horizon.
Yeah, that would be right on the limit probably of visibility. So binoculars would definitely help your odds.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that one. And then in the morning sky, people can try following Vega into the daytime sky. I feel like that one would be tougher.
Hmm.
It's bright, of course.
hmm Yeah, yeah. Well, both would be challenging. So it would be interesting to hear from anybody if they're able to see that during before the sun is risen.
Yeah, and before it sets for Sirius, might
hmm
give that one a shot. Should be able to handle that one. April 5th, we have the first quarter moon pairing with Mars. And again, they're well within a 5 degree circle here. I made my circle here for the meridian just as it's totally dark. But just before it's dark, in particular on the East Coast, I think they're 2 degrees or less apart. So should be able to get Mars and the first quarter moon together in the same field of view all at once.
Yeah, another nice pairing.
So that'll be nice. Good photo opportunity there too with Castor and Pollux nearby. If you have a really wide field telescope, you'll be able to get Pollux in that.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this, if you're taking a photograph, is I assume anyway, excuse me, that you would not have to do multiple photos with different exposure settings. Both the moon and Mars are quite bright, and I think you would just, expose that whole field and away you go. Whereas with the moon and the Pleiades, in order to not wash out the moon, I don't know that you'd actually get the Pleiades in the same photo. So you'd have to do multiple photos with different settings and then stack them to probably get them both in there.
You gonna try to get the old astrophotography gear going again?
Negative, sir. No, just not a lot of interest for me in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I get that. It's a lot of, I love looking at the photos people take, but it's a lot when you're going out under the night sky to bring with you, and you end up spending time with the equipment under the sky versus, doing your observing under the sky.
Well, and that for me is a slippery slope, a slippery investment slope, because I have very modest, photography gear, especially for astrophotography. And, I think if I really wanted to do that, I'd probably end up wanting new mounts and cameras and everything. And, I don't want to do that. I've got enough invested in telescopes and eyepieces.
Yeah. I've been looking at some of those shots that people are taking with those C-Star type devices. Those are pretty cool, but
yeah.
At the same time, it's another thing. Maybe I'll get one of those eventually. April 10th, we have the Worthington Pancake visible on the moon. I kind of took a Google around and found a visual of that. If you're looking at the moon, it's sort of in the bottom left facing the moon, and it does look like a pancake, whereas it looks like a crater that's kind of risen up and has some kind of inconsistencies to it. Almost looks like some sort of baked good. It's located on the south side of the Schickard crater, and it's part of the Phocelids group. Not really sure what that is.
If you tilt your head to the left, it almost looks like there's a trident in the middle of it there.
Cool. Yeah, I did. I put an image link there. I don't have permission to. I don't know whose image that was, but it did show it quite well. This raised floor and the surrounding shallow upside down oval dish type feature there. So kind of neat.
Yeah, it's the web page is Andrew Planck, so he's the author and astronomer listed here. So I believe it's his photo.
Yeah. So people can go in. I put a link there in the notes, so people can go and take a look if they so wish. I think it's kind of cool. On April 13th, we have the full moon. It is the smallest full moon in 2025. Which I think is the one that we celebrate. And there's actually an occultation of Spica for Central and South Americas. So it's pretty cool to see Spica occulted by the moon. So if you're in those regions, go on out and take a look.
Yeah, for sure.
On the 16th, we have the moon in Antares as an occultation, but it's not here. The moon is going to pass in front of Antares, an occultation for Africa and parts of Australia, actually quite a few parts in Australia. So if people, I know there's a few listeners anyway down in that region. So go and take a look if it is for your region, because I think it was like eastern and south to west and all this stuff. I didn't quite understand the actual zone, but it's a pretty good swath there. But here on the same night, or I guess very early in the morning, we have a occultation of Phi Scorpio. and it's going to be occulted by the moon just before 2 a.m. Central Standard Time. I just put it in our time here because I think it's just for Western Canada, which is what our notes say. And so the moon passes in front of Fisco at just after 2 a.m. And then it reappears at about 3:15 a.m. and that's in Central Daylight Time. Did I get that wrong? Should it be Daylight Time, Shane? I always get that confused here.
Well, CST, excuse me, Central Standard Time.
Yeah, but we're on the same time now as Calgary. You see, folks, there's a difficulty here because we don't change time, but I think we change time zones. So it's always so we go from CST to CDT. We don't change the time, we change the time zone. So it must be Central Daylight Time. Anyway, it's whatever Calgary, Alberta, Canada is on if you're looking for it. 2 a.m. in Calgary is when it disappears, and then 3:15 or thereabouts is when it reappears. That should be a pretty good one. That's a pretty bright star, and it's low down, but should be able to see that with binoculars, small telescope.
Is the image you have to the right, is that
That's
for
it.
this one? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Moon just before or just after being full. And on April 21st, we have the last quarter moon, and zodiacal light becomes visible again for this would be like the last best time to see it for the year. Definitely too bright as we get into May, but for the last days of April, first couple days of May, you'll be able to see the zodiacal light in the evening sky looking west. Kind of looks like a bit of a pyramid or light pollution or something like that on the western horizon, sort of pointing up and just below the Pleiades. And then we have Mercury at greatest elongation, 27 degrees from the sun in the morning sky, but not super well placed this time, Shane, sadly. Looks like it's still pretty low. I think at its best here, maybe it's 4 degrees above the horizon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just because, although it's far from the sun, it's the angle of the ecliptic being very shallow because it's, I think, just up in Aquarius or something like that. So anyway, it's just too far along the flat spot of the ecliptic, if we can call it that. But if you have a really good horizon, you'd probably be able to see it. But I put in my image there for the 25th, so I don't think it's much lower than. But I don't even think it hardly gets. Might be 5 or 6 degrees up. You might be able to pull it out. But it's going to be a challenge just to see it, but not really suitable for telescopic observation. This is just getting out to see it. On the 22nd of April, we have the Lyrid meteor showers. These come from long period comet 1861 G1 Thatcher. And looks like the best nights are going to be sort of late on the 21st, 22nd, but the whole period apparently lasts from the 15th to the 29th with 10 to 15 meteors per hour. But I think the real peak, if you get it, but I mean, you're going to have to be probably in the UK or Europe is probably the best place to see these because I think here it's like the middle of the afternoon when they peak, which gets like to about 18, I think, meteors per hour at its peak, which if you were out like early morning hours in the UK or in Europe or like Spain or somewhere like that, you definitely notice 18 meteors per hour. You would see a few of those, especially if you're looking towards Lyra as it's rising in the east.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
On the 25th, we have this grouping form up of Venus, the moon, Saturn, Mercury, all kind of pair together in the evening sky for a few nights. In fact, this starts some days before with Mercury getting at greatest elongation there on the 21st. But this is going to be a nice view in the morning sky as we have Venus and Neptune and Saturn. I think Neptune's going to be a pretty tough one to see that far down, but for the others, Venus and Saturn being just about 5 degrees apart, at least on the 25th, and they're just going to be paired nicely in the morning sky for this pretty much full last week of, or actually last 10 days of April should look pretty good. And then the moon joins in on the 25th for a few nights, and then it will go below the horizon or become a very, very thin crescent getting close to the sun.
Yeah, quite a smattering of solar system objects right there.
Yeah, kind of neat, eh?
Yeah, it
I
is.
think the real show, and sorry, go ahead.
I just said, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think the real show in this is just Venus and Saturn getting so close together.
Hmm.
And they're rising, so, but I think it's only on these nights where they're kind of I don't know if they're close enough to be I just think they only get within about this 5 degrees, but I don't think we get what do you call it when you have the two things paired in the sky at the same declination is a
Conjunction?
yeah. I think this is just an impulse,
Mm.
but anyway, still looks pretty
Is
cool.
is 2025 when Saturn's rings go edge on? I believe
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
yeah, it is. I think they kind of go edge on, and then they come off a bit, and then in October, that's I think when they're super edge on, if you can call it that.
Mm.
On April 27th, we have new moon and Venus there in the morning sky. It's going to be getting a little bit higher, is going to be at the greatest illumination extent in the morning sky. You'll remember there, I think about 2 months ago, we had it at the greatest illumination extent as well. And for people watching it, it was bright. But then when it got to that greatest illumination extent, that day it was clear here. I think it was very cold. And I was looking at it. I think I was on the phone with Mike, and we couldn't believe how bright it was. Like that greatest illumination extent just really turns up the volume on the brightness. So well worth getting out to take a peek at that in the morning sky.
Hmm. Even when Venus was in the evening sky, it just was so bright this year. It's I don't know. It really caught my eye every time.
Yeah, and it's really going to be bright on that morning of the 27th of April. If I think I'm off that day, I'm taking a few days off around then. So fingers crossed we get some clear skies. And like I said, I'm going to be kind of sidelined doing more binocular observing here for a little while. So I'll be like planning my observing a little differently.
Hmm.
All right, April 28th, Gegenschein is going to be visible around midnight, highest in the south. So this is the anti-solar illumination, sort of from the backside of the Earth. The sun kind of creeps around and then focuses on a point opposite the sun in the sky. So you want to be looking very high in the south, but I think here it's up like 40 or 50 degrees, maybe 60 degrees. I think for southern Canada, it's at like 67. And then as you get into the States, it's going to be higher up. So it just depends on where you are. But you need to be at a very dark sky to see this.
Hmm.
Here's the star that I put in. So, and this is from Marie Noonan in the calendar. SS Virginis is a carbon star that is going to be well placed towards the end of April, beginning of May, and it's a nice red star. Hard to see in my chart is kind of small there, but if you kind of zoom in and blow it up, you'll see it's a nice little red pinprick. But what Maria has done is she has kind of calculated the night when this star will be best placed. You can see it's just past the meridian on this night, and then it's also at a phase where you're going to see that deep red color. I think as it Yeah, as it dims down a little bit, you'll see the red color. But anyway, people can kind of go and take a look at that one if they so choose. I think
Mhm.
I will try to see it in binoculars. And then we have some other well-placed objects. Shane, this is a good night, especially if you have nice, clear southern horizons. There's a few things to go out and take a look at. So the first thing that a lot of people are going to see, sort of high in the south, is the bright star Spica in the bottom of Virgo, and then to down and below to the right of that, you're going to see, well, you'll see Corvus, and then over to the right, you'll see Crater. And then just above Corvus is the Sombrero Galaxy, which is Messier 104. And a lot of people go out and take a look at that beautiful edge-on spiral galaxy.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite galaxies in like a decent sized telescope. Like it really can take on that, appearance of a sombrero. And I remember views through my 12-inch where you're starting to get that three-dimensional feel a little bit with the way the dust band curls around. It's a beautiful galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. And then I forget, there's a planetary nebula and the mice. There's a few other things in Corvus that are well worth looking at. But as far as easier objects to see, and kind of like for those working on their Messier list, M68 is well placed at the meridian as we get into the end of April and beginning of May. This would sort of be the prime time to try to see this stuff. And the method to the madness in Marie putting all this together is that sometimes it can be tough to figure out what those nights are, and so many times early on in our observing, we end up missing objects because that night we go out and are looking at galaxies because we think of spring as being primarily galaxy season, and then something like a globular cluster, 4.5 degrees below Corvus, towards the meridian is going to sort of slip by again unnoticed, and then you very much almost have to wait a full year for it to appear in the morning sky at least. But this is a nice leisurely evening observation and hopefully some tranquil conditions.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Good opportunity.
Yeah, so M68, that would be sort of the target of the month, I would say, if you're kind of following along with the Messier objects. Globular cluster there, just below Corvus, between Corvus and Hydra. And then over to the left, we have M83, which is sort of between, well, it's just below a couple stars over in Hydra too. Won't get into all that, but it's an edge or face-on spiral galaxy. Again, pretty low down. I think it gets to about 15 degrees in altitude here, so it's fairly low, but visible. And then can't see it from here. In places like Nova Scotia, it rises above the theoretical horizon, though I'm not sure that I ever could say I saw it. But maybe in Ontario, if you're at the Great Lakes, you'd be able to see Centaurus A. I've read some rare
Mm.
reports of that. And certainly if you're below the 42nd latitude, I think that's when you stand more and more of a decent shot of seeing Centaurus A from, any sort of reasonable northern climate. It just sort of gets better and better the further south you go. But anyway, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like when is this visible? Well, there towards the end of April, very first week of May, we have a nice new moon, no moon in the sky. And then if you're far enough south, you can try for Centaurus A. Like I said, pretty much got to be at about 42 degrees latitude or further south. But I think lots of people listening to this are at those latitudes, particularly some folks are even much further south than that, and probably are being blinded by Centaurus A every night, wondering what we're talking about.
No kidding.
Did a look for some comets. There's nothing brighter than magnitude 12. In fact, I think one of those Atlas comets that was visiting us last year is the brightest thing in, as far as comets go, still at magnitude 12. And really that's getting, well, you could see it in maybe in an 8 or 10-inch telescope for sure. These are getting to be pretty faint comets that really aren't on the spectacular end of the spectrum, sadly.
Yeah, we got spoiled for a little while with the amount of potentially bright comets and then a few that did go bright. But for the foreseeable future, there's nothing really forecasted to get much brighter than magnitude like 8 by November. But that's like the brightest comet of the year right now. So we'll have to watch. As always, comets are somewhat predictable, but highly unpredictable. So something could go bright unexpectedly, but right now, nothing on the horizon.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just never know. Keep an eye on things. We're making up the ones for, we're making up the comets for out here with the snow, making them up now for 2026. Anyway, looking at the IAU and United States Naval Observatory data to see, I think there's a few that are coming in that will get reasonably bright. So nothing is as bright and naked eye as the ones that we've seen in the recent years. But yeah, it seems like we've had a pretty good run of them there for the past 4 or 5 years anyway. Like I don't recall having seen so many naked eye comets as I think we have seen 3 since 2020.
Yeah, something like that. And a couple of those were substantially bright.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think 3 of them were pretty bright, but I think I might have seen 4 naked eye. So that's almost like one a year, or like one every 16 months or 14 months or something. So I think that's fairly rare. So just by the law of averages, eventually we'll go into a bit of a rut here again. But anyway, that last one, whichever one it was, I can't remember. I think it was Atlas Shushan. Yeah, that one was sort of the most surprising and in a way disappointing because that brightest night we had clouds. I did see it. And then on subsequent nights, it was just like I was observing it, but it was just like, I don't know whether it was the conditions, but it was in that twilight sky with the moon up, and it just felt like you couldn't get a really like deep look at it because the moon was interfering, and the skies and that were a little bit bright. So anyway, it's kind of the way it goes. But did you have anything as far as objects or things that you want to look at in the night sky for April, Shane?
No, I really have nothing else to add.
Awesome. All right. Well, please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers and send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.